So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back to this post-lunch session.
And she said, Sipho, how do you do it? Open society, isn't this funded by George Soros? Isn't this, how do you reconcile your Pan-Africanism and the fact that you're getting your funding from a source in the United States? And I said, it gave me a very important entry point to have this conversation. Or is it something imported? OSISA works to promote democracy and tolerant societies in our region. It sounds like a contradiction. Many people say, well, you take money from imperialists and you're trying to promote democracy in Africa. Whose democracy? And in my view, democracy is indeed a Pan-African value. In decolonizing ourselves is to see these icons for what they were, normal human beings who failed in other important aspects.
Meaning of Pan-Africanism in the 21st century. He argues and contends that democracy is an inherently Pan-African concept, or it's inherently part of Pan-Africanism. You can't divorce the two concepts. And then, of course, in a bout of South African exceptionalism.
As we know, the UK, and it's been pointed out, has an industry around bringing in students from all over the world. It's actually a large part of their economy. However, when you go to British institutions, where are these voices? Where are the voices from around the world? They are far and few in between, so to speak. However, School of African and Oriental Studies tend to be slightly different on that account, as far as actually students tend to have quite a strong voice. SOAS was also a hotbed of activism for some time. Whether that has continued or not, we can debate. However, when I came back to South Africa, and having taught at UNISA before I left South Africa and went to UJ, and took over as the head of the journalism department at UJ, and being a former journalist myself, I was struck by we didn't talk much about decolonization or juxtapositions between coloniality and decoloniality, for example, but we talked about transformation. Transformation was a hot word in the media, it was a hot word within the universities as well. However, the curricula was far from transformed, if you wish. The readings were still based very much on European scholars. There was a take on the news media that was decidedly European. To some extent North American as well, but decidedly European. This struck me as very, very odd.
And so Mutimbe and Frans Fanon tell us that we must distinguish between colonialism and colonization. And their attempt to enlighten or illuminate this, they tell us that colonization refers to the physical occupation of one territory of one people by another, and that colonialism refers to a replacement or displacement of a people's culture by another people's culture, arbitrarily so. And so that it is very important for us to understand these differences, because once we're able to do so, we're going to understand that we're facing some tasks that are different, even though interrelated. When we do so, we'll understand that the Pan-Africanist project was telling us at a particular point in time that it is very important that in our struggle we must repossess the land that was taken from us by others, so that we can reclaim the political and economic independence. But they were telling us at the same time that this was insufficient. It's very important for us that where we have been de-Africanized, we must re-Africanize ourselves. Where we have been dehumanized, we must rehumanize ourselves. And that is why the Pan-Africanist project at all times, when explained by Cheikh Anta Diop, he tells us that our project is to not only to rehumanize Africans, but to rehumanize the entire world. And that is why Bantu Biko tells us that the Western world may have done wonders in creating an industrial and military outlook. I'm an African.
It was just very powerful. I'm just like observing. So, the need to distinguish between colonization and colonialism. We must re-Africanize and re-humanize. And the one that I really like, Prof, and I really hope people won't plagiarize you on this one.
In the future that's coming, 9/10 of them will be stuck in manual labor. That was a prediction in 1894. And if you look at our statistics today, we are the 1/10. Somebody spoke about the talented 10th earlier. We are the 1/10 that is supposed to be the agents of that particular system that Sisu John Rhodes represented. We don't feel it anymore. He who feels it knows it. The 1/10 doesn't feel it. The 1/10 is the class that is the buffer between imperial interests, if you want, corporate interests, if you want, state interests, if you want. But if you want to feel it, if you want to feel the meaning of Africa, then you can't theorize in a bubble anymore. Because this is the problem with decolonization. Decolonization was a project of the British to begin with. It was the British who went out to decolonize. In other words, to give people independence. This is what gave us many of our African countries. It was independence that was negotiated in Westminster. Zimbabwe was negotiated for in Lancaster. South Africa was negotiated for in rich wine farms, in the Western Cape, at the homes of a tiny Roland in the UK, and so on. This is where our freedom, our liberation was given to us. So why should we talk about being given land, being given freedom, being given democracy? Because if somebody gives it to you, they have a right to take it away from you.
I'm Hubert Kabasudabu. I'm a doctoral student at UJ, Department of Political Science. But I'm a former governor in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So really it's fascinating to hear South Africans. I've been living here since 1992. So I've really witnessed the rebirth of South Africa. It's really fascinating to see how South African brothers and sisters are grappling with what we call the syndrome of decolonization.
There's two Africannesses, I may call them that. There's a largely anachronistic version of Africa, which we framed as and we idealistically want to go back to. And there's an evolving Africa that is somehow merged with the West, that creates new identities. And so the question becomes, how do we reconcile modernity post-Westernization in Africa as part of Africanness?
A caring leadership, a responsible leadership that is selfless, that's got no self-interest in this. Across board, not just intelligence, not just academic, not political, not business, not community, across. In other words, do we have people that are still willing to serve their African people? Because we can talk until we're blue in our face.
Starting in the now, global Africa, stepping back, West Africa, then further back, Pan-Africanism, going back in order to come forward. So we have, in a sense, come full cycle. We have not arrived at answers to all the questions that we have posed, questions that, as we pointed out from the get-go, were posed in the first place by our leaders, the young people. So what have we achieved? I'd say that we have connected, we have reconnected, we have questioned and challenged each other and challenged our own selves.